I want to start out by something that didn't happen here but happened in Washington, D.C. that relates to HB1, our social media bill. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there was a bipartisan grilling of some of the social media platforms yesterday, and we sent a letter of appreciation to the Senate Judiciary Committee, thanking them for their efforts to shine a light on the harm that's being caused to children from these addictive platforms. We also issued or sent out a video that compares the cigarette hearings in 1994 with what we've seen 30 years later with the social media platforms, where in 1994 these executives were saying nicotine's not addictive, it's not a problem, nothing here to see, and we heard the same thing from Mark Zuckerberg yesterday. And so again, I applaud both Democrats and Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee for taking up the charge that we've taken up here in Florida on HB1, and we're glad that they're engaged on this issue, and I hope there's federal legislation coming soon on that issue. So with that, I'll take your questions.
Have you discussed with Governor DeSantis?
Didn't talk fast enough.
His apparent concerns about legal issues with HB1?
We talk about all kinds of things, but we've had conversations about that. We're working with everybody and lawyers and anybody that wants to opine on this. Obviously, we have a bipartisan team on this, and so what we're looking at is how do we get to the crux of what we're aiming at, which is making sure that children at a younger age whose brains are not developed, who are being severely harmed by social media platforms, have age verification and they're not on those platforms. So you'll see, or you may have already seen in the Senate, contraction on the 17 and 18-year-olds. You'll see some additional amendments that we're trying to work through, but we're working very, very closely with the Senate, very closely with the governor's team to get to a bill that will be upheld by the courts. We're very mindful of all the legal challenges that will be raised and could be raised, but we do believe from the input we've been getting that our bill is in a unique position, that this is a better effort than previous state efforts, and with that we have some confidence that we will succeed once a challenge is brought.
But there will be some changes made to HB1 as
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Changes that we're supportive of. Obviously, as we go through the process, we continue to try to shape the clay to be prettier and prettier as it goes through, and so we believe the bill will be a smaller target for those that we know are going to try to challenge this, and we get to the crux of the issue, which is protecting children from addictive technology. John.
What do you think of the governor sending the state guard to the border? Is that part of the mandate that you maybe envision in creating the state guard as a legislator?
Well, I think Floridians, and therefore the governor and through the state guard, need to be concerned about complete abdication of the defense of our border. It is beyond my comprehension how a president of the United States can suggest that we ought to be cutting defenses to people flooding across our border. It is a true crisis. It's not getting any better, and we have a president who is feckless and incapable of acting on it. And so, yes, if we need to do that, I think then that's an appropriate use if that's where we need to go. So nobody else is doing anything. If the president were to do something, I would say the states don't need to be engaged. If he's protecting the border and we have a reasonable, flow of legal immigrants and a process, but that's not happening. And so we're in a position where states have to step up and act.
Did a Republican presidential candidate act wrongly by saying, don't pursue a border policy that...
I don't have I haven't really been following that. I've seen little headlines. I don't have enough information.
One feckless president.
We do have that.
But the presidential candidate stopped discussion of a border policy going forward.
And I know that happened, but I candidly, I'm so busy here in the state legislature that I have not had a chance to digest what was being discussed, what the objections were. I just don't have an answer for you.
Just yesterday, there seems to have been a development on a big legislation that could have potentially brought a casino to the Fontainebleau. The Senate said that they're not going to consider it this year. They were under the impression that the House was not going to either. So my three-part question is, did the governor, it's my understanding that he was in support of it, as well as Jeffrey Sofer. Did he have any conversations with you? If so, did he request that you hear the bill? And what did you say in response?
Well, as I've said previously on gaming, my priority, and I think we're all kind of on the same page, is that we get the casino, the Seminole Compact up and running, get it functioning well, not stub our toe in something that would breach that. And there's some bills out there that I believe would breach that, and just focus on that. And so that's what I'm doing, and that's what we're going to stay focused on this year, is getting that up and running. We're having good conversations among the parties about how do we spend that money. And one way we've talked about doing that is keeping that in the environmental bucket. I think that's something all Floridians agree on. We've got to take care of our water quality. We've got to, manage our land properly, and we need to conserve land where appropriate in places like the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So making the compact a success is where we're focused.
Did the governor ask you to carry the bill?
No, I mean, we talk about stuff, but we're on the same page of where we are, which is let's get this done right, and what happens in future years is up to future legislatures. So.
Speaker, on school choice,
Yeah.
we've heard from a lot of parents this session in the House and in the Senate this week too, and they go to like hybrid or online schools, like a 3-day on or 2 days online, and they've been really frustrated about not being able to access the vouchers. And even some groups have said that Florida should expand it to like online students for vouchers. Why does Florida oppose using or opening the voucher system for those kids?
Again, and I'm going to sound a similar theme, but we had massive expansion to go to universal choice. We're the biggest by far in the nation. And it's important, I think, when you make a big expansion like that, to make sure that things settle out, that we have fidelity in how our taxpayer money is being spent. Today's bill did things to make sure that the payments got out on time, that looked at some concerns that I share and others share about what monies you can use to spend on what things, and we want to make sure that's in the educational bucket. But given the language of last year's bill and curriculum, people interpreted that. So we're trying to narrow and clarify those issues. We work on that, but do we want to continue to open the aperture for all students? Yes, and so it may not be this year, but I guarantee you there'll be a school choice bill next year and the year after that, and we can address some of the particular and unique needs of parents that you described.
For HB 49, the Senate's version of that legislation is pretty different.
Okay.
It keeps the 8-hour, it keeps the 30-hour a week. It moves, I think, the time you can work a little earlier to 5
okay.
and later
Gotcha.
to midnight.
Yeah.
Are those provisions you're in favor of, or is the way the bill is right now in this chamber something you're expecting to take a firm stand on?
No, I mean, it's a member-driven process on that bill, and I know the sponsor, Representative Cheney, has done a great job of trying to make sure she addresses very legitimate concerns. We don't want kids working overnight and that type of thing, to make sure that we give kids an opportunity, but it's an opportunity that's appropriate, especially if they're in school and they need to get that rest and be able to perform the next day, because that's their main job when they're in school is to learn. But work's a good thing. I worked when I was 12 or 13, and maybe that wasn't, I don't know if that was against the law or not, but it was good for me. And so I think we want to make sure we have an opportunity for kids that are in a situation, and when they're 17 or 18, to go work somewhere. And
Say similar, you're coming up near the midpoint of this session.
Yeah.
You have this legislation, the child labor stuff that has to be ironed out. You also have Live Healthy on the other side that's not gotten any hearing over here. I'm wondering about your look at where things stand now. Your social media legislation has to get some kind of hearing over on the other side as well. Are there any things that you're seeing now that look like a no, like it's not going to happen?
nope. I mean, the Senate President and I are working together very, very well. That bill will absolutely get a hearing. I applaud her for all the efforts she's made on it, and so we're working very well together. But it's as you know, a very compressed time schedule in the air traffic control to get those bills up and out, but they will get up and out in due course.
Could we, I want to steer back, if we could, I was a little bit confused about your answer. So
On what? On which?
on the issue of the gaming, and so basically, yes or no, did the governor ask you to consider the bill that would allow the casino in Miami Beach?
I mean, we talked about it, but again, I think the consensus from those conversations was let's leave it be, which is what we've done.
So you had a conversation and you all basically came to the conclusion to not do anything?
Well, I mean, that's where we are. Yeah.
Well, I know that's where we are.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the question is whether or not you may have, because I think there's some buzz out there that maybe you had initially signaled that you were open to it, and that perhaps you changed your position on it.
Yeah.
And that
Change
the
my position on it, that I can answer definitively. So I think there was a gross amount of misinformation at times about that, about where people were, which is unfortunate, not coming from the governor, not coming from me or from the Senate president, but outside the Capitol, that probably caused a lot of unfortunate rumor and gossip. I mean, you can ask the governor about that, but where we are is we're in agreement that we're going to stick with a compact and make sure that gets running well, and that's where everybody's comfortable.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to go back to the Live Healthy question. A lot of the policies in the House version of Live Healthy seem to align with the Senate policies.
Yeah.
So it really just seems to be a pretty large funding difference.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is this something that you're going to be able to keep outside of the budget? Because it's a large chunk of money and there's money in both of the substantive bills, but can you kind of help me understand, in your opinion, how that's going to work?
The question is what, though? What's going to work?
Trying to settle, it's not...
The money difference?
Yeah, it's really more the money.
Sure, yeah. So I'll speak to that in this way, is that, we've both come out now with, and the Senate still has some floor amendments, but both sides have produced a responsible budget. The governor recommended a responsible budget. That's something I think everyone is committed to. And again, there's consensus on that. And we just want to make sure we're in a good spot so that we know how much available resources we have for an ambitious program like Live Healthy, which we support. And I applaud the president for her work over the summer and really digging into the weeds on a lot of these things. And so now we can look and say, okay, we have more money to spend on a priority like Live Healthy. So I think in the coming weeks, as we merge that and come to a landing spot, you'll see more money, come into that bill that's more in line with what she introduced initially, while also, looking at places where we can compromise on the funding.
So just for me to understand, and thank you. So it sounds like you maybe would be coming to budgetary decisions first, and then to go back and to then take that information and plug it into your negotiations on Live Healthy?
I think, we've talked about the budget considerations, but I think the overarching budget considerations is the budget. And if the budget's in a good place, which I think both budgets are very responsible, fiscally conservative budgets, that we're going to now have the room to do more than what the House currently has in its bill to meet the really bold proposal that the Senate President has put forward.
Similarly, the Senate sort of showcased its effort to try to reach that prison capital improvement program.
Yeah.
KPMG had this very ambitious 3 choices you could do to improve this system that needs a lot of work. The House does not have such a dedicated source, it seems, in its budget. Do you know much about where that stands now? Will the House go along with something?
I think it's too early. I wouldn't read, any final answers in the initial budget of the House or Senate. And again, we wanted to start in a way that truly prioritized. And you see, I put some money in there for nursing homes, and that as we look at even in a tight budget where we're really trying to be pretty cautious about our spending, there were priorities there, and the Senate did the same things. But that's not to say that we won't ultimately meet the Senate on an issue like that, or they won't ultimately meet us on where we are on that issue or another issue. So it's early. I think you'll see as the parties get together. Obviously, the natural course of things is for the budgets to grow a little bit to reach that concurrence, but not so much so that it's not still a budget that's fiscally conservative and responsible that we can all be proud of, that also meets the needs of the state.
Last question, guys.
The Florida Senate just passed a bill related to state ethics and some of the guidelines. And one of the last-minute amendments would potentially preempt local ethics commissions from investigating certain complaints and going on their own. Do you support something like that?
Is this the citizen review boards for law enforcement or a different issue?
No, it's a different one.
Yeah, I think the Senate's advanced that, and that's something we're certainly going to look at.
Are you interested in looking at and revising local ethics commission rules?
We'll take a look, but I don't have an answer for you yet. Yeah. Okay.
That's all.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.